Hey everyone, DM Jared here. And as a dad, someone who works 9 to 5, and then also plays 2 to 3 different role-playing games per week, I find myself struggling sometimes with combat. It becomes a game of who can kick whose shin the hardest. And that's boring. As the Eternal DM, it's my job to kind of make games fun. Now, I don't have to be on my best every single session. That's not what my players demand of me, but I should still come with my A game every time I sit down to DM a game. So I'm about to give everyone out here the 3 cheats I use to make my combat. When I'm not even feeling at 100%, I use these 3 cheats and it changes combat dramatically for my players. Now, like with all good things, use this cheat sparingly. Like when you're cooking, you don't dump a ton of salt in. So don't dump a ton of salt in. That's what these are for. You could have your regular combat encounters. Oh, 6 bugbears jump out and attack. Okay, you roll, sing back and forth. But maybe in the 3rd encounter, you use one of these things. And then it looks like, oh, wow. Your players go from sitting on their phones texting or not really engaging. Maybe the wizards already picked up their spells and they're like, listen, I'm about to fireball and turn this combat. It's going to be done real quick. Trust me, these 3 cheats are going to change the game for you. So, cheat number 1, dynamic combat. Now you say to yourself, DM Jared, what does that mean? What does dynamic combat mean? I'm going to tell you right now, dynamic combat is a fancy term for just making a silly thing happen or making something happen while the combat is going on. So, from one of my games, I sat down and I was prepping out my game session. Like I said, I only have about an hour or so free time. If I'm not sitting here making videos or working or being a dad, I get maybe an hour or so to myself and I play a few games. And by play, I mean DM. So I don't have the most amount of time to prep everything out. But I normally prep out my combats and my role play, and then I go to the next stuff. So while I was prepping out some of my combat, I realized that my players were about to come into a forge that was being controlled by a bunch of Durgars. Now, they needed to get into the forge for whatever reason. What would be cool here would be one of these dynamic combats. While they were going in to the forge, the first player who cast a spell or swung a weapon that rolled a natural 1 or kind of like failed really badly, right? Like rolled a 2 or 4 or a 3. Doesn't always have to be on the 1, right? 1s are bad, but a 3 can be bad as well, right? So I said, anyone who rolls like a 3, 2, or 1, this is going to happen to them. That they are going to swing. And as they swing in this forge, they're going to hit a chain, right? Maybe it's with their sword or a club or an axe or a magic bolt or whatever. And the chain's going to snap. And it's going to tilt the forge. And all the molten iron and stuff is going to melt out and flow out. And it's going to split the party. It's going to split how the players are going. And remember, you don't have to be doing this with a map or anything like that, a VTT. You could be doing this theater of the mind. All of these are really good theater of the mind stuff. So it's going to split, and then it's going to, flow all that hot molten iron and ore. It's going to flow out, and it's going to split. And maybe 2 or 3 of the fighters are up in the front handling a bunch of Durgars, and now this magma, hot liquid just kind of flows out and steam fills the room, separating the party. Well, firstly, that's really cool. Steam's filling the room. Now my players in the front feel, oh no, how do I get back? What do I do? And my players in the back are like, oh no, what do I do? Well, I'm hoping, a few things happen. 1, the rogue can use this to their abilities of stealth. Can I use the steam to kind of hide down, get closer, and then lunge out and use like perception to kind of listen to see if I can hear anyone get closer, or maybe have my teammates tell me where the enemies are, and I'll lunge out. and then I'll give them disadvantage on their attack, or maybe it's really cool what they come up with, and they might get advantage, or it'll be a flat roll. But that's what I mean. Dynamic combat. You could do this for anything. Okay, they're fighting outside in the woods, and it's a generic encounter. A bunch of goblins were asking for a toll, and the barbarian got mad. And you know what happens when the barbarian gets mad? She's got a rage. So she rages and grab a goblin, shakes the goblin, and now combat ensues. While that barbarian, picks up her battle axe and swings it, and up rolls a 2 or 3. Okay, well, you missed the goblin, and as you miss, you swing, you hit a tree, and it's a dead tree, and your axe doesn't get stuck, right? That always happens. How many times have you been playing, you throw your sword to the floor, or you drop your weapon, or blah, 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 you dropped it, or you swing, you hit the tree collapses, separating, half the goblins from the rest, and those goblins decide to leave, and now you're stuck with the one goblin who was demanding money. Well, the party might say, okay, well, we can handle this. We don't have to worry about this goblin. But they also might need to worry about the goblins that got away. And that's the trick. You want it to seem like the world, the environment is alive, and stuff they do can resonate with the world, not just in role play and stuff like that, but even physical stuff. How many times have you been outside and you're walking and you accidentally tripped? It happens. You rolled like a 2. You didn't fall prone and, dropped everything. You just tripped a little bit, and that's perfectly fine. And if you add stuff like that, trust me, use it sparingly, not in every encounter. Not every encounter have to have this dynamic combat, but just sparingly, and you'll see that your players will be a little bit more alive every time the combat happens. Tip number 2, real simple, I got you. Monster Mayhem. Monster Mayhem. Let me say that one more time. Monster Mayhem. Why do I mean my Monster Mayhem? Very simple. Your monsters can do cool stuff too. And by that, I mean, even the chumps will always do something cool at some time. So, you got a bunch of goblins. They're being jerks. That same group of goblins that had the tree fall, they now run to the bridge, and they decide to start hacking at the bridge, and now the bridge is gone. Something silly like that. Additionally, who says a goblin doesn't have a potion of stone skin? They decide to drink it. That goblin that got left behind has a potion of stone skin. Change up their monster stuff. Having bugbears happen are cool. Having a bugbear wizard is even cooler. Doesn't have to be a 10th level wizard. It could be a level 1 wizard that's a bugbear. Stuff like that. Monster Mayhem. Have your monsters be a little bit more alive. Now, I'm not saying you have to stat out a million different things for this. Just do something fun with them. There's a goblin has a bunch of bag of fireworks. Lights the fireworks, throw the fireworks at you. What do you mean the goblins have fireworks? They have fireworks. Monster Mayhem. Monsters are there to cause mayhem. Doesn't have to be they set fire to the forest, or they Durgar, or they're not. Doesn't have to be something so crazy that they have these crazy abilities. You could just give them a little tweak. It doesn't even have to change their stats. And then all of a sudden, having that little tweak changes how people view the creatures. And remember, the goal is to make your players really feel engulfed by the world. Suddenly now, the monsters are a little bit more real, just like the world itself. The tree that fell because the barbarian hit it. Now you got a goblin with a bag of fireworks. A little bit more mayhem. Again, sparingly. Not every goblin has a bag of fireworks. Finally, this actually happened in my last session. I was playing on Sunday. And I like to call this my third option, other option. And I know that's silly. You're like, what the fuck does this mean, other option? Excuse my language. Other option. Well, one of my players, she was in my Rise of the Rune Lords campaign for Pathfinder. She was a druidess, and they were fighting a kind of like a zombie bat. But think like zombie dire bat. Big zombie dire bat. and it's flying around, and they're in a cavern. They're trying to, like, it's ducking and weaving behind the stalagmites, stalactites, and they can't get a clear shot. Every time they go to shoot, it's in half cover, and a lot of them are hard, and most of them aren't really made for combat. They made a lot of their characters have a lot of social aspects, and that was fine. So the druidess kept saying, turns around and says, I'm in a cave. Is there anything I could do with the cave that can help me make my help me? And I don't know if you feel comfortable doing this. Remember, it's your game. These are just options. But she turned around and said that to me, and I said, sure, not a problem. Roll me a nature check. She rolls nature. She rolled very high. And I said, you know what? You notice that while the bat is flying around, the walls don't seem solid. Like, they're solid, but they're not held together very well. Everything seems a little loose and craggly, and even loud sounds are causing rocks to crumble. So she goes, well, can I start to hit the walls to cause, the rocks to fall on this bat? And I said, sure, not a problem. I made a DC or I said a DC in my head. And then she started swinging on the walls to try and navigate the rocks to fall. I kept making her use nature checks as her attacks. And I said a DC, and she actually killed the creature doing this. And it turned out really cool. And you saw that all of a sudden she was really inspired by that second. It wasn't, oh, well, you could just shoot your bows, or you could shoot this, or you could shoot that. Or you could run from the encounter. They were using their environment to their victory. And that's what I mean. Other options. Let your players have other options. Even in the combat, they can still do other things. Maybe the barbarian noticed that the trees are all burnt. They're all burnt trees. And instead of the barbarian missing and forcing the tree down, maybe the barbarian runs into the woods. And then the player's like, okay, well, Ruby just ran from the party, so we're going to keep fighting these goblins, but that's weird. And then on Ruby's turn, she makes an athletics check to tumble a tree onto the goblins. How epic is that? That's freaking epic. But think of it like this. Your players wouldn't be inspired to do that if you don't help inspire them. And that's our jobs as DMs, to help inspire our players to inspire us. And if I can say inspire one more time, you have to like and subscribe down below. So please help and inspire me and my crew of NVNG by giving us a like and subscribe. Well, for me, DM Jared, I hope you use these tips. I hope they're helpful. Like I said, they were super quick. You can use these in your prep. If you got an hour to prep, you can use these, and again, sprinkle them in. Not everywhere. Just sprinkle them in. Just every little bit. Not a lot. Not a lot. Don't go crazy. I hope these help you. And again, we are nothing venture, nothing game. Rolling dice. Giving advice. A little bit of that New York spice. Take care.